Welcome to this explainer. So many of us walk through life carrying this invisible weight. It's like this heavy, unnamed burden that just sits right there on our shoulders, day in and day out. We absolutely feel the exhaustion, we feel the constant stress, but we just don't have a name for it. Now, think about it. When you hear the word trauma, what instantly comes to your mind? For most people, it's the big stuff, right? War, severe abuse, or maybe a catastrophic accident. We think of these dramatic, undeniable events that leave very visible marks. And because your past might not include those massive catastrophes, or maybe you just think, hey, what happened to me wasn't that bad, you probably just rule it out entirely. You kind of just conclude that trauma simply isn't your story. But, okay, that leaves us with a pretty massive question. If it's not trauma, why do we carry that weight anyway? I mean, think about a childhood where love always felt conditional on your performance. Or maybe years of chronic stress that your system processed as danger, even when nothing overtly dramatic was happening on the outside. Maybe it was an emotionally unavailable parent, or a relationship that just slowly over time convinced you that your needs were simply too much. Why do those everyday experiences leave such a heavy, lasting mark on us? Well, let's get into Section 1. The event is not trauma. We're about to look at a complete paradigm shift here. To really answer that question, we have to completely change how we look at this. Because trauma is not the event, it is the response. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. The movies, the media, the common narratives we all hear, they get this entirely wrong. They almost always focus on the external explosion, right? Instead of the internal aftermath. So what is it actually? Trauma is the response that occurs when an experience simply exceeds your nervous system's capacity to process and integrate it. Basically, it's what happens when something is just too much, too fast, or too overwhelming for the specific resources you had available at that exact moment in time. Your nervous system is unable to complete its normal processing cycle, and so, well, it just gets stuck. This actually perfectly aligns with the framework developed by the incredible trauma researcher Peter Levine. He notes that trauma is what happens inside a person as a result of what happened to them. And what this means is that the exact same external event can be highly traumatic for one person and completely fine for somebody else. Literally, no big deal for one, life-changing for another. It all comes down to your internal resources, your support system, and your context at that specific time. Moving on to Section 2, Big T versus Small T. Let's look at the everyday architecture of this. Researchers actually often divide this into two distinct categories. On one hand, you've got big T trauma. These are the acute, dramatic, objectively severe events we were talking about earlier. But on the other hand, we have small t trauma. Now, these are the chronic, relational, and developmental experiences. And here's the reality we miss all the time. They both produce lasting dysregulation in our nervous system. Let's actually break down some of those small t experiences for a second. We're talking about emotionally unavailable parents, chronic criticism, bullying, conditional connection, or maybe constantly having your needs treated as an inconvenience. And I want to speak directly to you here. None of these might feel like a dramatic movie plot. They aren't explosive. But if you have lived through them, let me tell you, they fundamentally rewire your nervous system's baseline level of anxiety and safety. And that brings us to an incredibly surprising anchor fact. I really want to slow down here because this is just absolutely vital. The nervous system does not distinguish between one dramatic event and 1,000 small ones. Yep, you heard that right. If 1,000 small daily events add up to send the exact same message, that the world is not safe, that your needs are not acceptable, that you have to manage everything entirely on your own, your body absolutely registers that as trauma. This brings us to Section 3. The body keeps the score. We need to figure out where all this actually lives. So where does all this unresolved processing actually live inside of us? Well, it lives exactly where landmark researcher Bessel van der Kolk tells us it does. The body keeps the score. This quote captures what is probably the single most important insight in all of contemporary trauma science. Trauma isn't just a bad memory sort of floating around in your mind. It is literally stored physically. It gets inscribed right into your hyperarousal, your muscle tension, and even your physical numbness. Notice the stark contrast going on here. We have the narrative memory, which is the literal story you tell about what happened to you, and then, completely separately, we have the nervous system, the physical activation, the tension, the shutdown. This actually perfectly explains why just talking about it is often totally insufficient. You can tell the story perfectly over and over, but telling the story doesn't mean your body realizes the danger is actually past. Which leads directly to this pretty punchy realization. the narrative can be recounted without the nervous system being reached. You can talk until you are literally blue in the face, but if your body continues to respond as if the event is still happening right now, well, you stay stuck. True healing means we actually have to reach the nervous system, not just the logical storytelling mind. Okay, section 4, patterns without a story. Let's look at this unprocessed history. I'm curious, do any of these signs give you a sudden aha moment? Things like disproportionate anger, a sudden freeze response, or maybe severe anxiety in situations that are, objectively speaking, totally safe. Or maybe you keep repeating the exact same relationship patterns regardless of who the partner actually is. Or you find yourself automatically shutting down. Listen, these aren't character flaws. Not at all. These are simply your body's incomplete processing cycles just running on a loop right here in the present. And that leads us perfectly into section 5, the functional freeze. This is a truly hidden adaptation. This brings us to a fascinating, yet I think severely under-recognized presentation of trauma that particularly affects highly capable people. It's called the functional freeze. Basically, it's a protective response to sustained overwhelm that creates this persistent numbness and flatness despite outward functioning. If you're going through the motions, hitting your deadlines, and checking off your to-do list every single day, but you just feel completely numb or flat inside, well, this is why. This isn't just simple depression. It is a brilliant, albeit totally exhausting, adaptation by your nervous system to just keep you going. So here is the crucial takeaway I want you to remember. The system did not break. It adapted. Actually, scratch that. It didn't just adapt, it completely rewired itself to protect you. Your body found a way to keep you functioning by turning down the volume on all of your experiences, even the pleasant ones that make life worthwhile, just so you could survive that sustained overwhelm. It's an incredible, highly protective coping mechanism. Which leaves us with this final, pretty provocative question to consider. Are you genuinely inhabiting your experience? Or has your system simply adapted to survive? I want you to take a moment today and really rethink your baseline state of being. Are you truly living or just successfully surviving an invisible architecture of unprocessed responses? I really hope this explainer has sparked some curiosity and given you a brand new lens to view your own psychology. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this today, and keep seeking to understand the incredible system that is you.